The building stood tall, proud, and shining with glass windows. Inside, rich people walked fast, holding files and phones. They wore expensive suits and talked only about money, meetings, and success. But there was one man no one noticed. His name was Marcus. He walked slowly, wore an old gray uniform, and always pushed a mop. Every morning, he cleaned the lobby. Every evening, he mopped the offices. And every night, he quietly emptied the trash cans. His eyes were soft, but deep, like he had lived 1,000 lives. People passed him without looking. Some laughed behind his back. Others made jokes like, "Hey Marcus, missed a spot," or "Must be nice to get paid to just mop floors." Marcus never replied. He just gave a small smile and kept working. No one knew that Marcus once wore a suit too. No one knew he once gave big speeches in rooms full of powerful people. And no one knew why he disappeared from that world. It was a secret he carried deep in his heart. One cold morning, Marcus was cleaning the hallway near the executive boardroom. The big doors were closed, but inside, powerful men and women were having an emergency meeting. The company was losing money. Fast. The CEO shouted. The CFO looked pale. Charts were shown. Numbers didn't lie. And just outside the door, Marcus quietly emptied the trash bin. A paper fell out. It had numbers, plans, and a chart that was clearly wrong. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He stared at the paper for 5 seconds. Then, slowly, he picked it up and placed it back in the bin. But in his mind, he had already solved the problem. He walked away, silent, calm, but his brain was racing. He had seen something very bad, something that could break the company completely. Later that afternoon, Marcus saw Mr. Simmons, one of the senior executives. Simmons was red in the face, angry, and shouting at a young intern. "You gave me the wrong paper. You're wasting my time." The intern apologized again and again. She looked like she would cry. Marcus watched from the corner. Then, slowly, he walked up and said, "Sir, excuse me." Mr. Simmons looked at him like he was dirt. "What? You again? I think the chart you used had a calculation error," Marcus said quietly. Page 3, bottom left corner. The numbers don't match the asset flow. Simmons stared at him. "You're a janitor. What do you know about asset flow?" Marcus simply nodded and walked away. That evening, the office was quiet. Marcus stood alone in the copy room. He picked up a pen and walked to the whiteboard where a diagram had been left half done. He erased one number, changed a symbol, and adjusted a total. Then he left. The next morning, chaos. People gathered around the whiteboard. The correction saved the company from a huge mistake. "Who fixed this?" the CEO asked. No one answered. They checked the cameras. It showed Marcus, the janitor. Everyone laughed. "You're telling me he saved us?" Maybe he got lucky. But the CEO didn't laugh. He watched the screen again and again. "Find him," he said. Marcus was in the basement, cleaning a bathroom. The same young intern from before, Lisa, came to him. "Was it you?" she asked. Marcus looked up and smiled. "Just did what I thought was right." Lisa was shocked. She sat beside him. "Who are you really?" He wiped his hands and said quietly, "I used to work in rooms like that. Before life changed." She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. In that moment, Lisa saw what no one else saw. Marcus wasn't just a janitor. He was something more. That afternoon, the CEO sent an email. "All department heads, report to the boardroom. Now." Everyone rushed in. The room was packed. Then the door opened, and Marcus walked in. The room went silent. Laughter started again. "Is this a joke? What is he doing here?" But Marcus didn't speak. He walked to the corner, pulled out a folded paper, and held it in his hand. His eyes met the CEO's. The CEO gave a slow nod. And in that moment, Something big was about to change. The boardroom was cold. The long glass table stood in the middle. Around it sat the most powerful people in the company. Directors, managers, and heads of every department. And now, the janitor was standing at the front. Marcus. Some stared in shock. Others whispered behind their hands. A few laughed, thinking it was all just a joke. But Marcus stood calm, holding the paper in his hand. The CEO stood beside him and cleared his throat. Everyone, please listen carefully. You may not understand what's happening yet, but after today you will. He looked around the room. This man, Marcus, saved us from a financial disaster yesterday. Whispers grew louder. One man scoffed. Sir, with all due respect, he's just a janitor. The CEO held up a file. He found a mistake in your department's report, Mr. Harlan. If we had followed your numbers, the company would have lost millions. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Marcus again. He still said nothing. Finally, the CEO turned to him and said, Marcus, please show them. Marcus stepped forward slowly. He placed the paper on the table and unfolded it. The numbers were handwritten. The math was clean and perfect. He had corrected 3 main reports and given a new plan, one that actually worked. No one moved. No one laughed now. Then Marcus spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, but clear. I used to sit in rooms like this, he said, not with a mop in my hand, but with a pen. I was once the chief financial officer for a major tech firm. Maybe you've heard of Helix Dynamics. A few people gasped. Everyone knew that name. It was a billion-dollar company. I helped them grow, built their financial model. But one day, I was blamed for something I didn't do, a mistake that wasn't mine. I stayed silent and walked away. I lost my position, my name, and almost lost myself. He paused. His hands shook just a little, but his eyes were strong. For years, I cleaned floors, but I never stopped thinking. I never stopped solving problems in my head. I may wear this uniform now, but my brain never retired. The CEO nodded. Marcus has offered us a new plan to save this company. He did it in one night, without a team, without software, just his mind. Now, everyone looked at Marcus with respect. The room that once ignored him was now listening. One young manager raised her hand. Why didn't you tell anyone before? Marcus gave a small smile. Because no one asked, and most people only see the uniform. Another voice from the back spoke up. Do you want your old job back? The CEO turned sharply. No, he won't return as an employee. He looked at Marcus and said something no one expected. He's joining us as a senior advisor, reporting directly to me. Gasps filled the room. Marcus was shocked. Sir, I didn't ask for this. The CEO smiled. You didn't, but you earned it. Outside the room, the same workers who once made jokes about him were now looking at him differently. The receptionist who laughed at his mop now stared in silence as he passed by in a fresh suit. Marcus walked slowly through the lobby, but this time, heads turned with respect. In the basement that night, he packed his old mop. Lisa, the intern, walked in. You're really leaving the janitor's job? She asked. Marcus looked at the mop and smiled. I'll always be a janitor at heart, he said, but now, I'll be cleaning up something bigger. The next morning, the company announced its new advisor. Photos of Marcus in a suit went viral. Headlines appeared everywhere. Janitor turns out to be genius behind company's comeback. The man who was ignored, now running the show. Hidden talent. Former CFO returns from the shadows. But Marcus didn't care about the noise. He just wanted to work, to solve problems, to finally use his mind again. That evening, while walking through the lobby, he stopped at the same trash bin he used to empty. He smiled, touched it once, and walked away. This time, with his head held high. The sun rose over the city, and the office building stood tall, just like always. But inside, everything had changed. The janitor was now in the spotlight. Marcus walked through the front doors wearing a clean suit, not a uniform. His name badge didn't say maintenance anymore. It said, Senior Financial Advisor, Marcus Gray. People stood when he passed. They greeted him with respect. Some were still shocked. Just a week ago, they didn't even look at him. Now, they waited for his advice. But Marcus didn't smile much. He didn't come for power. He didn't want revenge. He came to do what he was always good at, solving problems. In the first meeting of the week, he sat at the big table, surrounded by executives. Charts, graphs, numbers, none of them scared him. He looked at them like old friends. When a young analyst nervously explained the budget forecast, Marcus stayed silent. He waited, listened, and then gently said, "You missed something." The room went still. He didn't shout. He didn't show off. He picked up a pen and circled a number. This figure is based on last year's broken model. If you update this variable, the whole picture changes. The analyst checked his notes and froze. Marcus was right. Completely right. Everyone stared at him again, this time not in surprise, but in awe. Meanwhile, outside the office, the story had gone viral. Social media exploded with headlines. Janitor shocks corporate world. He cleaned their floors. Now he cleans their mistakes. News channels wanted to interview him. Talk shows wanted him to speak. But Marcus said no to all of them. "I'm not a celebrity," he told the CEO. "I'm just a man who wants to work." But not everyone was happy. Two department heads, Mr. Klein and Ms. Voss, whispered behind closed doors. "He's making us look bad," Klein said. "He's just a janitor," Voss added. "I don't care what he used to be. He's not one of us." They planned to make Marcus fail. Quietly, they started pushing him into last-minute meetings, gave him bad data, wrong reports, tried to make him stumble. But Marcus didn't fall. He always checked the facts twice. He stayed calm, quiet, focused. He never blamed anyone. He just kept solving. Then came the biggest challenge yet. The company's largest investor called for a review. If the new numbers didn't impress them, they would pull out, leaving the company in ruins. Everyone panicked. "We have 3 days," the CEO told the team. People worked all night, but nothing made sense. The numbers didn't fit. The forecast didn't look good. The investor wanted to see proof that the company could survive the next 5 years. That evening, when the office was empty, Marcus stayed behind. He sat in silence, staring at the screen. He didn't use fancy tools, just paper, pencil, and his deep understanding of numbers. He stayed the whole night. At sunrise, he finally leaned back, smiled, and said softly to himself, "Got it." When the boardroom filled up the next morning, everyone looked nervous. Marcus walked in with a simple folder. He placed it on the table. "This is the 5-year plan," he said, "not just numbers, but a real path forward, based on real data. No guesswork." He explained every page with calm confidence. The room was silent. The CEO smiled. This changes everything." The investor looked through the report, nodded slowly, and said, "We're staying in. In fact, we're doubling our investment." Cheers broke out. People clapped. And once again, Marcus didn't smile much, just a small nod. He had done what he came to do. Later that night, as the staff celebrated with cake and laughter, Marcus stepped outside onto the rooftop. He looked at the city lights, deep in thought. Lisa, the intern, found him there. "You should be inside. They're celebrating you." Marcus smiled. Let them celebrate the company. That's what matters. She looked at him with wide eyes. "You're not just smart. You're kind." Marcus looked up at the stars and said, "I've been forgotten before. I know how that feels. I never want anyone to feel that again." Lisa asked softly, "Do you miss your old job?" He looked at her and said, "No, I finally have the right one." The office building was now quiet. The chaos from the past week had passed. Everyone had seen Marcus Gray, the former janitor, rise to the top with calm, clear brilliance. But not everyone forgot how they treated him. Not Marcus. And not the ones who laughed first. A few weeks earlier, he was just the janitor. He pushed a cart, carried a mop, and emptied trash bins. People ignored him. Some even rolled their eyes when he walked past. "Watch your step," he would say kindly. They wouldn't even reply. At lunchtime, when the workers filled the break room, Marcus sat alone with his sandwich. He never disturbed anyone. But one day, he made a small mistake. He walked into the break room and accidentally knocked over a water bottle. It rolled to the floor, splashing near someone's shoes. The man, Mr. Klein, stood up, angry. "Can you even watch where you're going?" he shouted. "Clean it up. That's all you're good for." People laughed, loudly. Someone added, "Maybe if he learned math, he wouldn't be scrubbing floors." Even Lisa, the intern, had looked away. She felt bad but said nothing. Now, everything had changed. Marcus sat in the big meeting room. The same people who once mocked him now waited for him to speak. Mr. Klein was quiet. Too quiet. Ms. Voss avoided his eyes. Even the ones who laughed had started whispering behind closed doors. "I can't work under a janitor," Klein said to Ms. Voss in private. "He's not a janitor anymore," she replied. "I don't care. This isn't right. He embarrassed us all." "He saved the company," she reminded him. Klein slammed his hand on the desk. "We need to bring him down." The next day, they tried. They sent in an anonymous report to the board, claiming Marcus had lied on his resume. They hinted that his numbers couldn't be trusted. When the CEO saw it, he was angry. But before reacting, he called Marcus into his office. Marcus listened quietly, then said, "Let me show you something." He opened a folder. Inside was his old math competition award, newspaper clippings from his youth, and even a handwritten letter from a university professor saying Marcus had one of the sharpest minds he had ever seen. "I walked away from that world because life got hard. My wife got sick. Bills piled up. So I took the job I could find." He looked straight into the CEO's eyes. "But I never stopped learning. I never stopped solving." The CEO nodded slowly. "Thank you, Marcus. That's all I needed." He never brought up the complaint again. But Marcus knew who had sent it. That Friday, something unexpected happened. A group of young employees gathered around Marcus in the lobby. They clapped for him as he entered. "You inspire us," one said. "My brother dropped out of college, but after seeing your story, he enrolled again." Another said, "My dad was a janitor too. You made me proud of him." Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Not from lights or sun, but from people. From respect. That evening, a company-wide event was held in the ballroom. It was a fancy dinner to celebrate the company's revival. Marcus entered in a simple black suit. All eyes turned to him. This time, no one looked away. No one whispered. No one laughed. He was seated next to the CEO, a spot reserved for the most important guest. During dinner, the CEO stood up to speak. "I want to thank the man who didn't just fix numbers. He fixed our hearts. Marcus Gray." Thunderous applause followed. Marcus stood slowly and walked to the front. He looked around the room. Then he said, "Some of you knew me when I cleaned your trash, when I mopped your floors, when you stepped around me like I wasn't there." The room fell silent. "But I never hated you. I never wished to be above you. I just wanted to be seen. As a person. As someone who still had value." He held up a piece of paper. This is my plan for the next 5 years. Not just for the company, but for the people. I want to create scholarships, internships for people from hard places. I want to build a bridge from the basement to the boardroom. His voice didn't shake. His words were clear and true. I don't need revenge. I want change. The room stood in a standing ovation. Even Mr. Klein and Ms. Voss had tears in their eyes. The sun was rising outside the tall glass windows. Inside the meeting room, everything was quiet. Marcus Gray stood alone at the head of the long table. In front of him was one sheet of paper, just one. It looked simple, white, clean, with only a few words typed neatly in black ink. But what it held would change everything. 1 week earlier, the CEO had called an emergency meeting. "We need a plan," he said. "We need to show the world who we are now." Some of the top managers looked nervous. Others just sat in silence. Then Marcus stood. He pulled out a paper from his folder. It was his own idea, a complete plan to turn the company into one that helped people, not just made money. He called it the People's Ladder. The board was unsure at first. It sounded too bold, too big. But when Marcus finished explaining, no one spoke for a full minute. Then the CEO said, "We will follow your lead." Now today was the day. The entire company gathered in the large hall. Press, employees, and even people from other firms were invited. The crowd didn't know what they were about to hear. Marcus stepped forward, wearing the same calm expression he always had. A screen behind him lit up. His voice echoed gently. "I was once the janitor," he said, "and I was okay with that. I took pride in my work, but I also had ideas. Ideas no one wanted to hear." He lifted the paper in his hand. This is what I wrote alone, during lunch breaks, while pushing a mop cart down empty halls." He took a deep breath. "Today, I stand before you not to prove anyone wrong, but to build something right." He turned to the crowd and said the words no one expected. "I am giving up my executive title." Gasps filled the room. "But I'm not leaving. I'm building something new." He pointed to the screen. "A training program for janitors, interns, delivery drivers, and anyone who ever felt invisible. A way for them to learn, grow, and become leaders. This company will be the first in the country to offer this." The crowd stood in shock. Reporters scribbled notes. Cameras flashed. People whispered, "Who gives up power like that?" But Marcus wasn't done. He walked to the middle of the stage and placed the paper on a stand. "This is where my journey began, and now I hope it becomes the start of someone else's." After the speech, the CEO took the mic. "I have never seen leadership like this." Marcus didn't just rise. He lifted all of us. The audience clapped louder than they ever had before. Mr. Klein and Ms. Voss stood with red eyes. Lisa wiped away a tear. Even the receptionist who once mocked Marcus was now clapping, slowly, almost ashamed, but deeply moved. Later that evening, Marcus sat at the same bench near the lobby. A small child walked up to him. She had seen his face on TV. "Are you the man who was a janitor and became the boss?" Marcus smiled. "Yes," he said softly. She looked up at him and asked, "Can I be like you one day?" He nodded. "You already are." As the sky turned orange and gold outside the building, Marcus walked toward the elevator. He passed the mop he once used. It leaned quietly in the closet, as if watching. He gave it a small nod, then stepped into the elevator. The doors closed slowly, and the janitor, who became a giant, left behind more than just a paper. He left a legacy, one built not with money or pride, but with heart. And that ended everything, and began something new.